Well, I said it much earlier at our national executive committee of our party, that if my party recommends me to its executive, I will contest. And I did that to save time and wide discussions among members of the party. So those who felt very strongly about it, they left the party, and the party nominated me. Why? Is because I felt that the three fundamental objectives we campaigned on in 2015 are still relevant. And we want to remind Nigerians to see when we started, 2015, where we are now, what we have been able to do in between this time of 3.5 years with the resources and the time available to us. Well, I think that's not a fair criticism or observation, because it's not backed by facts. I don't think there is anybody that has been pointed out as corrupt in the last dispensation, which we look the other direction. I think I can best illustrate my experiences on this. When I came in uniform in 1984, we arrested the president, the vice president, the governors, the ministers, and put them in detention and said they are guilty until they can prove themselves innocent. We put committees of investigation almost based on geopolitical zones. And those that were investigated, except two Nigerians, late Biamun Usman, a junior minister of education, and late Adam Chiroma, a governor of Central Bank, and a minister of finance, were the only people who were found to have managed their resources with integrity. But I myself eventually was arrested and detained, and those people who were found guilty of misappropriating public funds were given back what they were misappropriating through thorough committee investigation. It's not just an allegation. They were given the chance to talk. So I decided to come now, and now I have to be careful. People are just not arrested like that, but when they hold positions, if they made a wrong declaration, it's just one point. They didn't mention how many houses they have in Europe and America or Asia, and they didn't mention the companies they floated and the contract they gave them. If eventually uncovered, they are faced in court with the documents. Well, we can't, to be fair to individuals, I told you why I have to be careful. And if anybody, the public should help us. If there are strong allegations and people backed it up by evidence, bank accounts, names of companies floated, contracts awarded, then we take them before the courts through EFCC and ICPC. And we have to trust the system and allow them to complete the investigation. If we just take people in, as we did during the military area, and lock them up, this system, the present system, multi-party democratic system, does not approve that. If you accuse any person, you have to produce the evidence in court for him to be prosecuted. So if there is strong allegation, the government may decide to ask people to go, like the former secretary to the government you mentioned. We asked him to go. What the Al-Majri case, I think we have to look at the 3 tiers of government responsibilities: the federal, the state, and the local governments, and the allocation of resources, revenue allocation formula, and so on, relative to the resources available to the country. Monies are dispensed to that 3-tier government system. So the question of Al-Majri's case, this lack of virtually primary, the basic education, are all local government problems. So even if the center has extra money, they wouldn't take it and build classrooms, equip them, employ qualified teachers from the federal revenue, while it is the duty of the local governments. If the local governments are not being given the money by the governors or by the state, then it's up to the local governments to come together and scream loud enough for Nigerians to hear them, so that there will be proper allocation of resources by the constitutional means. Well, my thought is that firstly, there must be a lot of education, and this I recommend should be led by the press to expose what the relationship, how effective the governments are dispensing to local governments monies, from the center. If that is not done, then it is very difficult for the federal government under this dispensation to enforce education at all levels by the respective states, either the state, the local governments, or the center itself. I will give, I think, some examples of this. In some of the investigations, it was uncovered that local government chairmen were made to sign for the money that are supposed to be their allocation, but they will only be given about 25% of the money. The rest will be taken by the governor. There are investigations in some of the states that are showing that. So I am expecting the press, on behalf of the people, to make an in-depth investigation and expose corrupt governors, and local government chairmen. Well, I honestly cannot remember the plan being taken to the National Assembly and how much they have commented on it and send it back to the center. It's the same thing with the disability bill. There are so much with the National Assembly. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, I expect, honestly, the elite, the press through the elite, to keep an eye on the activities, on the bills between the executive and the National Assembly. If the executive send a bill, they can hardly put it in the budget unless it is returned from the National Assembly with their comments or with their recommendations. Well, what happened started from Benue State was unfortunate. And we foresaw that. When I say we, I mean the federal government. And we asked the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development to go to the archives and find out the gazettes from the First Republic, where those incredible leadership of the First Republic, there was cattle route, there was grazing areas. With limited resources, they put windmills, earth dams, and even veterinary clinics. But subsequent very important personalities encroached on the cattle routes, on the grazing areas. And if a herder has 200 cattle, they have just eaten, whichever their way to the water point, they will just go through there. And I think the Minister of Agriculture and Water Resources have produced the maps, the encroachment.
But these are old maps, and this is today's problem. So we might have had a solution to this many years ago in the 60s with the routes and everything, but clearly that solution is no longer tenable now. And so the issue is, these are urgent problems that we're facing now. People are dying, people are getting killed, conflict is breaking out. What are we going to do about it, like now?
What we are doing about, we have already started, and we have to ask, especially the governors. The movement is from north to south, and it's quite predictable. After the harvest, you know, the cattle have to move southward for water and pasture. And then our borders, for example, between Lake Chad and Benin Republic, about 1,400 kilometers with Niger alone. And look at the Cameroon's one. And to effectively survey that border, when structures were tampered with in terms of cattle routes and grazing areas, it is very difficult. We have sent this in back through the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to the governors so that we can create these corridors. But for a government like Benue government, when they said they have banned cattle rearing or they have banned grazing, we are in the same country. I expect our government to insist on the routes to be re-established in the grazing areas. But to say that cattle cannot move, it is very difficult. Benue is complaining, but I understand they are already in Bielsa. From there, are they going into the Atlantic? Well, I think the government made a statement on that. Firstly, by asking that there should be TSA, Treasury Single Account, so that all monies, you know, either as revenue or from recovered from corrupt people, will go through one single account so that it can be accounted for and how it is taken away. I think I have already made a statement on that issue. And what we are doing is that the extreme deficit in infrastructure, that money will be put, you know, for the infrastructure, the roads, the rail, power, but it will go along with budgeting, which means initially the National Assembly, when they approve the budget, whatever deficit is likely to happen will be funded from that money. Well, I think the best people that really answer that question are people from the northeast. That means Yobe, Borno, Bauchi, Adamawa. You see, when this administration came in, Boko Haram was holding 17 local governments in the northeast. They are not holding any local government now. So they have resorted, you know, to indoctrinating young people, especially girls, wrap them up with explosives, and dispatch them to soft targets, churches, mosques, marketplaces, motor parks. But the best you can get about the performance of this administration vis-a-vis stopping that Boko Haram occupation of Nigeria is when you visit Maiduguri or beyond. People go back to the land they are farming, they go back to the office, they can drive from Maiduguri to Kano virtually any time of the day, which wasn't happening when we came in. And as I said, I still feel that you, the press, should do more research and not just going and staying in a hotel in Maiduguri. Try to go to Munguno and talk to the people.
But there's no doubt, though, that we've seen an increase in attacks against the military in particular by Boko Haram. In the last 6 months, we've had 2 major military installations attacked and soldiers killed. Are you at all concerned with this focus or new focus that Boko Haram seems to have, which is basically targeting military targets, and the success they've actually had in killing hundreds of soldiers in the last few months?
You see, thank goodness, if you have a background of military training, that when you don't fight any conventional war, now that they are putting tactics of terrorists, they choose their targets. They choose the time, they choose where to attack, at which time. With that, you have to be highly mobile, you have to have very good communication, and we have resources limitations, because a lot of Nigerians don't feel that we are in an emergency, that the military needs a lot more money for equipment, a lot more money, for spare parts, for communications, and so on. But Boko Haram, certainly, they are being supported by forces outside Nigeria. I received weekly situation report from the military in the front. It's extremely difficult, to accuse, the soldiers of going to the extent of demonstrating. But the consequences of that now was that the Army Command has to put investigation, court-martial officers and men for demonstrating, because soldiers are not supposed to demonstrate. And then the action the military is taking against in the front line, let me call it Maiduguri the front line or the northeast, is not normally given to the press. Because on the trial, those who have been tried, if they are not found guilty, they are supposed to be reabsorbed and posted out. But those found guilty are sentenced by the court-martial. And this is being done.
Okay, so the concern, though, for ordinary Nigerians is that soldiers appear to be getting punished for being whistleblowers, for indicating that all is not well with the military hierarchy, and that the military hierarchy is not spending the money that it is allocated on soldiers and their welfare. Are you not concerned at all about that?
Certainly I'm concerned, where we get officers who short-changing troops, either misappropriating their ration accounts, or they are not paying them in time. But one of the things I did when I came back clearly, and I got the governor of the central bank involved, was that as far north in the country, there are banks And soldiers are allowed to open 2 accounts. One, where their families are, and make a written allocation. And then they take the balance wherever they are. And that was being done. So we foresaw that because of the experience I had in my military service, to make sure that there is no longer pay on the table. Mm-hmm. So that paymasters cannot shortchange them.
So you're not convinced that there's anything untoward going on with the military budget? That's what it sounds like, that you're not convinced that there's a case to be answered by the hierarchy of the military. That's what it sounds like.
Well, the system, I believe the system is still working. Otherwise, there would have been a complete breakdown. The system is working, but it's much more difficult. And don't forget, there are soldiers that think they should only wear a uniform to get the security, mainly the material security, salary, allowances, and accommodation for the family. If you ask them to go to the front, they will put the gun down and disappear. Fighting corruption, I think I have already made a comment on that much earlier on. But the important thing is that you cannot catch Nigerian on paper because we have got all the regulations laid down in the ministries, in the parastatals themselves, government offices. So it's a question of effective supervision. Effective supervision using the accountant general, the auditor general, to make sure that budgets are studied and then accounts, are checked, and making sure that those who mismanage public funds are punished. I think this government, as I said about a week ago, I will have to ask EFCC and ICPC to make a comprehensive, submission to the public about what has been recovered and from whom. People are voluntarily bringing money, and we are seeking the cooperation of the United States and Europe to please help us recover assets from those countries. These are quite detailed and are documented, and I think we have to, it's high time we go to public with it to show that how much is recovered. And with TSA, that amount of money, nobody can remove them unless we do it through the budget and through the office of the president. I think that is quite obvious. Okay. As I said, we are following a tedious way of doing it. We have to go through the documents. We are lucky the banks are cooperating, and we go and find out people who were living beyond their means, or where contracts were given for projects and they were not executed, or are not executed according to signed agreements on specifications and so on. And that takes time, because what we found out is a nasty process. You get a determined Nigerian patriotic, passed through university, this is NYSC. If he served 5 years under a crook, he eventually becomes a crook. And we cut the top, we removed permanent secretary, we removed some directors, but these people that are coming up, some of them were involved in mismanagement of resources. I find this problem extremely difficult, and we have got the legal problem. Unless you have got your documents through the banks, through companies, and you take them to the court, you are not going to get any decision. I can't afford to get frustrated. I keep on telling the law enforcement agencies, and the administrators in the ministries, it's their own responsibility, to document mismanagement, and if it has to come to presidency, let him do it. I can't ask, to be elected, you know, on security, economy, and fighting corruption. And then I get frustrated because some people are not cooperating. I cannot afford. I will defend myself on that. I haven't gone to Kano yet.
Right.
I have just gone to Kogi today, in my venue. That clip, somebody brought it me, how the governor of Kano State was receiving dollars and smiling and putting it in his pocket. I don't know the extent of technology used, and I can't understand it. Now, because the State Assembly has taken it, they have gone to court, I decided, you know, not to talk about it. And the State Assembly, constitutionally, they could have dealt with that. But then again, the matter was taken to court.
Okay, but what are...
You can't say.
No.
As
He
I
can
told,
talk for
He
himself.
doesn't know. He doesn't
as
know.
I told you, I have seen the clip. I don't know how much technology was used, but can Ganduje fail to trust somebody to get the money to him? He has to take it directly himself, smiling. I honestly am completely overwhelmed, and the system has given me some relief. It is in the court, it's in the State Assembly, so let them as much as possible deal with it. But Kano, this thing has received a lot of publicity, and I hope by the time I go on my campaign for re-election, there will be some answers from the courts or the State Assembly in Kano State about the performance of we are extremely concerned about the morale of not only soldiers, but retired people. I think if you are following up about 3 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago, what we did with the Nigerian Airways workers, we paid them, and I know the military, they are conducting checks through military hospitals and record offices about people who are retired. And I think payments are being made, even to the families of the deceased. There has been so much fraud, from records, you know, to physical, even wounded soldiers, those who were incapacitated. And this government is going back to the records, checking with the hospitals, checking with units, and the record offices about soldiers. And I believe, of recent, what we have done with the airways workers and so on, we are doing it in the military. It was a continuous exercise. And I believe the military are having confidence that now they are being looked after, especially the ones that were injured and they became disabled. We are revisiting all that.
Okay.
Well, that sounds like, if impossible. I think we have made our case, and I hope you will have time to watch my visits to Bauchi, to Kogi, and try and watch the other visits to the states, and then see whether I'm fit or not. The way I go around the stadium and respond to the cheers of voters and explain our position and explain them where we found the country when we came 2015, where we are now, what we were able to do in between with the resources available to us. And I'm very, very satisfied with the reaction from the real voters. That wouldn't be the first time I lose the election. Don't forget, I tried 2003, and I was in court for 30 months. 2007, I was in court for 18 months. 2011, I was in court for 8 months. And I went up to Supreme Court. The third time, I say, God day. And the fourth time, God and technology came in. The PVC and card readers, you know, the opposition took it for granted. Before, what they used to do, sit down, look at constituencies or states, allot marks or allot seats in constituencies, and they say anybody who disagrees should go to court. Now, most of my voters are looking for the next meal. Why do they get money to go to court? So they say God day, and eventually God day.
Thank you. Thank you very